Okay, hello everybody. So, my name's Ghislaine Boddington and I'm going to talk to you about the Internet of Bodies, the connected and collective body. So, just to tell you a little bit about my background, I'm actually not in the gaming world. I work directly with a lot of projects which involve body technologies, and I work as a creative director for an SME called Body Data Space, and as a curator. And I do a lot of work on future trends and future thinking. Body Data Space, we're based in East London. We're a collective of very wide-ranging skills, and our key thing is what we're called, really. We put the body, the living body, at the centre of virtual and physical space, and we work with the data that's collected around it. So my background actually is performing arts. I'm coming from a dance background years and years ago, and I've actually ended up working extensively with a variety of different body technologies. So the living body, yeah, a few people have mentioned this today. I can hear this whole thing about the human coming up more and more in the discussion around gaming. And yeah, for me, it's absolutely clear. It's got to come from the living body, the centre of our beings, and that we can participate and be creative within these environments. So this is kind of one of our mission statements. We just see that technologies can help us to actually extend our participation in many, many different ways. And so I thought I'd put a slide up about liveness. So we're here live today, and we know that liveness is a really precious thing. We know that actually the intimacy that's there between us, the eye contact, that breath, that immediacy of presence in the room, the interaction that can happen between humans who are live together is very precious, as is the memory of that. And the memory of that is retained in all of us, all our lives, in many, many live event occasions, whether it's weddings, births, etc. For Body Data Space, we're blending and converging this live presence, and we're about 11 years old, and I've been working in this area since the early 90s. So we're looking at particularly a variety of things: telepresence, avatars and virtual presence, robotics, we work with a lot, wearable computing, and motion, sense and gesture technologies. And we see the body as the kind of natural interface to those technologies. So we create group immersion experiences, which I'm going to show you a few of, and which are connected through collaborative share spaces, through different technologies. So, having shown you the live body, this is how we see the hypersensory body of the future. So here we are at the middle of it, and actually we transmit now, and we know this from many of the tools around us, data from our bodies out into the world. We can transmit and we can receive back. We can transmit one set of data and we can receive back another set of data. And even in the telephones that you've got with you now, many of these transmission tools are there. Obviously audio and visual, proximity with the GPS systems. We're using touch on the telephones. We're using, obviously, the beginning of the facial and eye recognition stuff in passports. And I'm going to show you some examples of the rest of these sensory transmissions of the body, which I think can be used far more in future gaming and future worlds for virtual encounters. My key area actually has been telepresence. I've been working on telepresence since about '92, with dance and theatre initially, connecting stages all around the world, where dancers in one space will be dancing with others in another space, and possibly 3 or 4 spaces linked up. So a few pictures from this, looking at virtual touch, actually, trying to get to points where we could actually be more telepresent or tele-intuitive about our bodies within that special space of telematics. Working close up and distance, skin upon skin, looking at full body connectivity, and most of the time without any wearables at all, because of course we're using cameras here. We're just transmitting data through video data and sound data from country to country, across stages, between clubs, between youth clubs, etc. We've done thousands of these. Training, doing workshops as well. Skin Touch Feel was a whole series that we did across the 90s and 2000s in different cities around the world. And 2 other big projects that I've curated and commissioned for. Future Physical, which was a project back in 2002 to 4, looking at wearables, looking at biotech, ecotech, and responsive environments, and also robots and avatars, a more recent project which looked at how young people are dealing with representation of themselves within virtual worlds and within robotics. So a lot of this work is about identity, but it's actually about our shifting identity and our multi-identities and how we start to deal with that. So this is an immersion environment, which was touch sensitive, heartbeat sensitive, breath sensitive, which you actually went in costumes, which actually took your heartbeat, your breath, and shifted the sounds and visuals around you. And here another biofeedback one, again using heartbeat and breath, making joint sonification and visualizations together as you clipped your wearable jackets together here. And virtual worlds. This is a project called Visions of Our Communal Dreams. It was made by young women, actually, in Liverpool, and then moved around Europe, getting additional layers put into it. And here you could fly your avatar in, but also visit through telepresence and add to that virtual world butterflies and flowers, etc., through Twitter. So back to my key theme I'm going to talk to you about, some of the projects we're doing now, and some ideas for the future that might be useful, might be not. Connected and collective. So I'm really interested in how we hyper-enhance our sensualities and our senses of our bodies, and what the decades ahead hold more in digital intimacy terms. The virtual physical sensualities and a convergence of technologies to help that. And as I mentioned earlier, here we are with our location, our proximity, our audio-visual in the room, touch and motion in our phones, recognition, and many of us using the Fitbits and different quantified self tools for gym, etc. So receiving your biofeedback. Again, we're much more aware of where our bodies are, what comes from our bodies, and how that affects what's around us. This is a biofeedback tool called 10th Sense, and it's made by Marco Donnarumma and colleagues. This he uses to make sound and visual environments around himself for his performances. But this has actually just been on crowdfunding to raise money, because it also can be used to actually activate software, to do for gamification, and it's about using your muscle movements, your blood temperature, your breath, and taking that data into whatever data you want to output it as, data, sound or visuals, or to action motion. A wonderful gesture touch piece by Umbrellium, which is a laser piece, which you actually draw the lasers around you, a bit like a holographic experience. And from the ballet world, even from the ballet world, sensors in ballet shoes, which actually make a shoe into a digital paintbrush, linked to an app which is used to show your journey through space, and then is used for rehearsals and for learning. And here a synesthesia piece, looking at seeing sound, looking at two senses coming together. Many people have synesthesia in different ways. So here, this is with a deaf choreographer, and creating through sounds from the dancers, who are partially deaf too, visuals that come from their bodies. I haven't mentioned VR, and that is because of a very particular reason. Here I've got a slide back, and actually I think that Wolfgang just showed some history of that. I don't know if he's in the room. This is my history of it. Looking at TV glasses. Hugo Gernsback actually was the guy who made the first sci-fi magazine in the world too. A real innovator in his time, and here he is in his TV glasses. And one of the reasons why I'm mentioning this, and also Steve Mann, who actually in 1980 was the first person to create glasses as such, and recognised by Google as such. He is in the University of Toronto and spent many years developing the iTap digital eyeglass and going into connected communities with that within Toronto, University of Toronto too, is because I really don't think this is going to happen. I just don't believe it. We're not going to be putting everybody in headsets. And a few people have mentioned this today, but for me, coming from a dance background, and very much about a free form of our naturally evolved bodies, yeah, this kind of disembodiment of the VR helmet is not going to be used for a lot of things and forever. It is a disembodying environment. So, I'd like to go further and look at actually what other senses that we've got that have still got to converge into our virtual physical space, and talk about some projects that start to do that. I'd like to look at taste and smell, and the artists that are starting to work with these areas, and gaze tech, which has started to be used in gaming, of course, caress tech, haptic and tactile environments, again, within the games world, again, feeding from biofeedback. And the Internet of Bodies is actually about how do we get to a more intimate place, a more pleasurable place, a place of love and compassion and hope. And how do we get more sensual with this too? And participation is obviously key to this. This is a project we did in 2012, and it's called Me and My Shadow. It feels quite old now, but at the time it was very special, and I want to show it quickly because it's a convergence of technologies around the body. It uses human gesture, telepresence, a very large virtual world, and motion capture. I'm going to show a little video of this. Now, this piece actually took place in 4 countries simultaneously. So it was in a box, as you can see, which isn't the best output way to do it, but it did actually mean you had no wearables on you at all. You were gathered, your data was gathered by motion capture and sent through telepresence into the virtual world. And we had those boxes real-time in Brussels, Istanbul, Paris and London for 2 weeks. In London, we were in the National Theatre foyer. It was during the Olympics programme when they had all of the stuff on the South Bank, loads of stuff going on. And about 9,000 people went through these 4 boxes during that time and met each other. It was a very simple navigation system. We're just moving shoulders, moving forward and backwards to travel through that virtual space. And the moon in the middle gave you a point to aim for. And we just gave people very simple instructions to try and meet and greet each other, to hug each other. Practically impossible, actually, but great fun. And people really enjoyed it. Great feedback on this project. So we've been moving forward, but before I show you that, just to tell you a little bit more about where I think we're looking at with the Internet of Bodies. And the Internet of Bodies being very clearly where I think we should be going. So looking at synthetic emotions. Synthetic emotions are love and affection with or for robots, avatars, holograms, the sex tech scene. Now this is a burgeoning scene actually, and there's a lot, as you know, of love and romance happening in the gaming world too. 26% of young people today in the UK said they would happily date a robot. And this is from very recent research actually. They would happily date a robot provided their android beau looked just like a real-life human being. Well, we know that is still a very expensive robot and not even quite there yet. They also, of course, want the perfect match, and they're looking for the matching systems to happen. This is a piece we did called The Blind Robot, a commission as part of Robots and Avatars. It's by a well-known robotic artist called Louis-Philippe Demer, and the whole piece was based on robot touch. The robot didn't have a head. We did this at FutureFest last year. It was also in Arts Electronica, at SIGGRAPH, at several other of the large fairs. So it's been tried and tested in many places. You sit in front of it and the robot feels your face. Feels your face in a similar way to someone who's partially sighted or blind feels, to get familiar with you. Now, seems a very simple thing. People found this very, very attractive to go towards. And of course, what this hints towards is, and we know it, the touch of robots, the feel of robots, and the machine-human touch is very much part of our lives onwards, particularly within the healthcare system and within domestic care help. There's a massive amount of work on social robotics. Equally, talking about holograms, when I talk to some of my teaching groups, and I work in different universities, in the future, they say, and this is 22-year-olds around this age group, when I find someone I want to have a date with, she or he might be in Tokyo. But for our first date, she or he could come to my house as a hologram and have a drink with me. So again, we know out there the conference holograms for the very big, expensive conference are incredible today. And we also know that within 10 years, they will be much more available, just as telepresence moved to Skype, just as we are able to make our own avatars today, and motion capture moved through to Connect. It takes around 10 years for these things to move out of the either military or academic circuits, and into the big businesses, into the domestic scenarios. So the hologram boyfriend, girlfriend, the hologram date, rather than the Tinder date, is something which is coming in the future. Here's our hologram, All Array. All Array was made in 2007, and she comes out, she's part of our collective, she comes out for very different events in different ways. Here she's working in live performance with Sasha at the Connecticut Art Fair in London a couple of years ago. She also comes out as installations, and she's installed at the moment at the University of Greenwich as an installation around macrobacteria, where she's been infected by a mould live, which actually enters her system through the data taken from the mould, from sensors, and is entered into her, so she goes slightly crazy across a week. The artist Ivor Diossi calls it AI, artificial insanity. Moving on into more sensualities, looking at eroticism and rapture and passion and sexuality, cherishing and tenderness and affection. We need these to be part of our virtual physical spaces. And at the moment, they're not there much. In fact, they're really not there a lot. It's particularly against the other words that I haven't even got up here, which is what most gaming is about. Competition and war and fighting and the negatives that are out there in the world. So, moving forward again in digital intimacy, there are a lot of projects happening around the digital intimacy scenario. You've probably heard of the connected dildos and the pillow talk projects. Many of them are in the papers today. But there's much further to go on this, and we do need to look at diversity of content in the gaming world and in the VR world to encourage a wider diverse audience and to encourage positive options in the world. One area for the future, and talking about the Internet of Bodies, is again looking at implants. 1/3, 34% of Brits, and again this is in the Nesta research, said that they would be microchipped at work if their privacy was 100% guaranteed. Now there are actually about 15 companies in Denmark and Sweden and other parts of Scandinavia where microchipping by your company is normal now. And there are several people looking at the ethics of that, and of course there's many discussions. We have a very brilliant implant specialist in Britain who's been a pioneer on this. You've probably seen him on the telly. He's quite a pop scientist. He's been ahead in this area. Professor Kevin Warwick has looked at implants for many years. Here, him and his wife show they're jointly implanted, actually, and connected together. They're connected through his computer system by a grain of rice-size implants. And here you saw this on the 5p piece. It's a bit opaque in the background, sorry, but you can see how tiny these things are. And there are implants also for the fingers of the hand. So the palm of the hand and the fingertips, magnetic implants. The magnetic ones, you can feel how far objects are. You can feel heat from a distance. And obviously, these things can replace many of the things in our bags. Our key fobs, our phone pins, our Oyster cards, our credit cards, etc. And there are many people going for implants. They're tiny little things. They usually go into this part of your hand. There are implant parties happening across Europe regularly now. And programmable chemical gels too. This is another area, silica-based programmable gels, developed for use within robotics to actually be the fluid around the joints in the body. Again, looked at as a potential future Internet of Bodies tool, where you actually can rub these gels onto erogenous zones and connect together at a distance with your partners. So implants and gels are one of the clear ways forward in the Internet of Bodies. Implants, I think, also have a lot of option possibilities for gesture tech and for caress tech and within the gaming world. So, here we are, looking at the collaborative share spaces that we have today. Today, Pokemon O's come up a lot. We're seeing it everywhere this week. This is very definitely a collaborative share space. The Pokemon O site and many of these others allow the individual to join with the group into the middle, both in a physical and a virtual way. Most of these are things that we've used regularly, and we are seeing now the development of these as we go into complex patterns and developments with creative users and developers together. These are non-linear stories, we know that. These are complex scorings, and many of you are involved in them in your making of games today. It's a new ecosystem, and we don't actually really understand it all yet. So the emergent dynamic is layers and layers of interwoven journeys, and they're going to get more and more complex. The Pokemon O thing I think is fascinating. I was actually looking for people running around Brighton this morning, even as I arrived. So, but I think how many people here are using Pokemon O with the app, yeah? Great, good. So maybe I'll grab a couple after and get some feedback on it. But for me, that kind of virtual physical blending is really the way we need to move forward. And there we've got an Internet of Bodies scenario happening. There's a group that's based near Brighton in Hove called Blast Theory. They're a very famous international theatre group, very well worth looking up. They've been working on these types of out in the open, GPS-linked, led by your mobile gaming environments for many years, and have done some fascinating ones. FutureFest. I'm a curator for FutureFest. Some of you may have heard of FutureFest. It takes place in London every 18 months. This year, it's in September at Tobacco Docks. It's a Nesta event. It's the Nesta kind of weekender of radical innovators and thinkers speaking out about the world to come in 10 to 30 years' time. And this year, we've got 4 themes: future love, play, work, and thrive. As you can imagine, I'm working on future love, and with my co-curator, Pat Kane, is doing future play. And for this project, we are creating a new environment called collective reality. Collective reality is for groups. Collective reality hasn't got any wearables. It doesn't have any headsets. It hasn't even got anything on your arms or hands, yeah? It's a sensory environment which responds to your interaction with others. And in fact, it rewards you through togetherness. And this piece is moving forward. I'm just showing a few little slides now. It's an artificial intelligent environment, and it works through generative motion tracking linked with sound and image. So you, as the group, create the sound and images around you and shift the environment and the space as you move. It's a living space. It's breathing. Even with no one else in there, it still is living and breathing. So these are the kinds of larger scale virtual physical spaces that maybe we can start to look at, and for gaming in general, not with objects in them where we're projecting onto them, but objects and images and generative material which is made by the people within them. So, just coming to the end of what I want to say, looking at this convergence of collective live presence, and with our new project, Collective Reality, motion tracking tech, generative sound and image, and mapping projection, we can enable immersive co-creation, and where we can come together in this more collaborative share space. But what's really important in that space is that actually we look at intimate lives and we look at togetherness, and we start to make a more diverse set of intimate and sensual content for VR too, and for other immersive experiences, made by people from diverse backgrounds. Now, this is a great set of people here, but there's not many people in this room from different cultural backgrounds, and there's not many women in this room. And I'm one of the only 2 women speaking on this platform today, so we definitely need to open this up. As far as I understand at the moment, the sexual content for VR that's been made is 70% traditional male porn, just being transferred into VR. So this is not really helping 2016 onwards, where we have a gender fluidity environment which is very, very out there and being discussed in many ways in the papers, where we have many diverse cultures within Britain itself and in many, many other intercultural scenarios. So do look at your company bases and look for diverse content, because those are the people that will buy. It isn't all going to be white lads that do the buying. We've got an exhibition on at the moment called The Games Europe Plays, well timely titled. not timely titled or timely titled, not sure yet. But this is at University of Greenwich. It's on till the end of August. If you're in London in these next few weeks, do come and see us. This has got several body tech works in it. They're not all games, but they are interactive. And most of them are looking at the link between the virtual and physical, between the inside of our bodies and the outside, between actually the layers of more social purpose environments that are starting. And I think the last speaker at the end of his talk talked about the VR for good area that he's working on. And there is some amazing projects out there looking at anxiety, looking at dementia, looking at various different aspects of health and social care, which are happening through virtual reality and through gaming. So there's so much diversity of content in that area too. And just to push again for women, there are some amazing women developers out there too. And we have a website called Women Shift Digital and a very active Twitter stream with many, many guys following too, very positively, celebrating the women who are out there innovating in this digital space, in the games area, but in many other areas too. The pioneers that actually have broken through with many things across the years. So, come to FutureFest, sign up for that. It's not expensive. We've got some great speakers, and some of these are for talking about the future of love. So we've got Cindy Gallop, who's going to talk about Make Love Not Porn. Don't know if you've heard of her, amazing woman. And DJ Spooky, talking about the future of the love song and of music. He will definitely talk in a very future tech way. We've got Kate Russell from BBC Click, talking about love and romance in games and virtual worlds. And she's speaking here this week too, I believe. And I believe Brianna Pratchett is too. So, and also we've got Brian Eno coming to talk about his future, and Will Self talking about the future of play. So thank you very much. And this is my email and Twitter stuff if you want to follow through. But maybe we could have some questions or some comments or some discussion would be great.
Hi. Sorry, I may have missed this, but where are those interactive installations going to be on display? Is that at FutureFest?
Yes, the new piece Collective Reality will be at FutureFest.
Okay.
And that will evolve actually again next year to involve, to include, there's going to be smell in it this year. FutureFest has got a big focus on smell actually as well, so just so you all know, and the future of smell and perfumes and food and tasting. But that will involve other aspects of the senses in the future too, yeah.
Thanks.
Oh yeah, here we are. Yeah.
I was curious on the slide where 30-something% of people were happy to be chipped
Yeah.
for work. What on earth persuaded them to accept that? What were they getting out of that?
Well, it's really interesting actually, and there's going to be, again at FutureFest, Dr. Phoebe Moore is going to be speaking, who's an ethics of workplace chipping. Yes, so she's at Middlesex University. She's a great woman, actually. And we will have another couple of implant specialists speaking as well there. And there's going to be probably a live implant on stage, so you don't know that. That's confidential. But so, yeah, in Denmark and in the Netherlands, from her research, she's doing really deep. She's been in there and been in the companies. There are companies that are now regularly chipping employees in little tiny into the hand here. It's used, obviously, for clocking in and out of work. But the ethics of it are complex because it's also used for the gym. It's also used for the health food bars. It's actually part of your health insurance, yeah? And it links into your appraisal, of course. So it does come back to you, of course, in a full circle. So, you know, my problem would be, you know, that I don't use a gym, so they'd notice that. They'd be like, oh, no, gym, you haven't used the gym, and that's not very good. And also, of course, if you sneak off around the corner for a cigarette around behind the bus stop during work hours, you're going to get caught because you're tracked, yes. So,
all of those are benefits of work. I was wondering
yes.
if there was any benefit for the employee.
Well, the benefit is tied into health packages. They increase your health package. You've got better returns on your health package. That's one of the ways they do it. So they do make it in this kind of full circle, a bit like Google does, when you know, everybody's tied into the whole benefits of the business. So, and there may be others too, but come along and hear Phoebe talk about it. Yeah. Yeah.
You were quite dismissive of VR headsets. Do you not think there's any space for kind of social VR experiences where you get multiple people using headsets together?
I have a problem. I've got two sons, 12 and 15, who obviously are obsessed with VR. And because they hang out with me, they get to do a lot of interactive stuff all their lives, so they're very on it. They want VR helmets, of course, for this Christmas. Everybody knows, let's just take our own lives. We're all very busy. We don't get that much family time, yeah? Even sitting down to watch a film together is not even once a week. You don't get, homework, exams, etc., etc. I do have a real problem imagining the four of us sitting on the settee in VR headsets, yeah, instead of actually being in family time together watching a film or watching something else. So I don't think it's about social. I think there's a lot of VR applications which will be used, particularly, as one of the previous speakers said, in the health, and I was talking about that more social purpose area. There's a really good piece called Deep by an artist called Owen Harris. It's an Irish work. I don't know if anybody's seen it, yeah? Which is, he, as a person, always has had anxiety attacks, and he found a way to deal with them through breathing, through taking himself on a journey to positive visualizations. He was also making games. He suddenly put the two together. And Deep is a VR game to take you out through an anxiety attack. It's your breathing that takes you on the journey. And by the time you get to the end of it, I haven't done it, but I don't know if you've done it? Yeah. You have? Do you feel calmer? Yeah. So there's a good example. And I think there'll be many more uses in that way. Obviously in education uses, obviously in surgery, and in deep medical uses, that's very clearly going to continue. Training, and training where companies are training across distance. So if you're a multinational company, training new employees together within a virtual space, that happens already. That is a very useful way to do it. But I do find, I actually collect them, these amazing pictures of group VR environments where people are, there's a great one where lots of people are sitting in desk chairs, where they're moving around, which work very well in VR, of course. You've got your, what's it called, revolving chair, very good, but with 80 of them all doing it in the same room. And we all know, we've all seen the Mark Zuckerberg one that he put out on Facebook, which is the room full of people in VR helmets while he walks down the middle and nobody sees each other at all. So I don't see the point, really. It's a disembodying, and it actually physically dislocates you. I'm much more interested in virtual physical blending.
Okay, but don't you see that there are many virtual environments already in which people share social, just share the space with each other, being disconnected. I can play with a friend across the country using a headset or whatever. We're not sharing the same space, but we're still having a connection because we share.
No, of course, and I've done a lot of work in Second Life, and I've done a lot, those, of course, there are community environments that happen. I'm well aware of the sharing within virtual worlds and within gaming. I just think that we need to look beyond this immediately.
I understand how that sits at a broader scale of this technology, but I'm also interested to see those experiences that are for single people, as in singular experiences and disembodiment. I think there's such a broad spectrum of what this technology can offer. It would be a shame to shut out the technology to explore those things as well. I understand what you mean about maybe young children being less sociable, especially with family, but VR's already been used to kind of connect people over long distances, and I also think there's nothing wrong with experiencing stuff just for yourself as well, especially as adults anyway.
I think the other area, of course, is AR, which I haven't mentioned today, and that interface into, and the MR that the last speaker showed too, for me is more interesting. Any other questions, comments? Yeah. This is a very topical debate, and very important to have this discussion and different views.
Yeah, I was just going to ask about, you seem to have quite a lot of installation-based things going on. How do you see sort of these becoming more commercial? Because it's kind of a hard thing for sort of people to get in their homes. They need to sort of go to an exhibition. Do you see a way to get these experiences for people, sort of just more general consumer?
Yes, I think we will see ultimately larger scale, maybe walls as screens within houses. So if we look at telepresence now, that's one of the next things that's going to happen. Many, many people link telepresence, Skype basically, or Google Hangout, etc., to families every day. Yeah, and I know I keep an eye on this a lot. It's my main area. There are families that actually have the Skype on all the time at the dining room table with grandparents or with a parent that's working abroad. And as we are all in this much more mobile world, and many countries, one parent is away the whole time working. It's back and forward every 6 weeks for a weekend. Yeah, I've worked a lot in Latvia and Estonia, etc. There's this mass exodus all the time. Yeah, those environments are really important. So I think we'll start to see there's several restaurants already in China, in America, that have got telepresence dining rooms, for example. And these have been available since the 90s. Hilton hotels actually put telepresence rooms for meetings in the 90s, which just didn't get used, interestingly enough. But nowadays this is happening. So there's a chain which has got restaurants between Beijing, Shanghai, and several other Chinese cities where you can actually go and eat in a room which has a big telepresence wall with your friends who are in the other city. Yes, so I think we'll see a development of that as those materials become cheaper, as we see more intelligent materials emerging which actually take data transmission. So polymers, plastic polymers, etc., which then will get cheaper and will be used much more as screenings in homes. Also media facades, and public site spaces. So the Internet of Things, which at the moment, as you know, is all still much more in that smart cities discussion, and is still really about linking up the heating between buildings or the electric systems between buildings, will gradually start to shift now towards more public space and civic space. And we'll start to see more facades there for gaming, for moving environments for gaze tech, etc., to actually interface with us as we enter shopping centres. I think Wolfgang also talked about the augmented reality, the Bearport project, those kind of projects. I think we'll start to see coming into that mass use, and Pokemon O is another example of that. So that's all quite exciting.
Excellent, thank you.
And maybe the way to look at it is, if you're doing projects which are in VR, it's this distributed platform, with care, try to think about how they can be out as well into a physical or group environments, if they can. Some are not, they're not the right experiences for it, but how do you actually start to move those out into physical environment without having to build pieces of furniture which you have to project exactly onto, because that's, of course, when it gets too expensive and non-domestic. Anybody else got ideas around that they've seen? Because I'm sure, please, because I'm sure many of you have seen these diagrams of domestic houses full of things, or whatever you'd like to talk about, of course.
It's just an idea of
Yeah.
what you said. The guy, there's a guy down the hall working with the plastic Warhammer miniatures. You get a whole army of little soldiers, paint them up, and have games on them. And he's got something set up where his board is digitized, and it can add flame effects, so you can see the other people's pieces even when they're not there. Is that more sort of what you see happening rather than just purely digital experiences?
No, and I think then HoloLens also helps us with that as well. And then I think, again, and thinking back inside the body, if you think about implants, also I know that several people will talk these next few days about contact lenses instead of glasses. These things are coming through, So what do we actually have within us already that we can, that we can either implant in or that we can use, which is part of our natural bodies already, without any add-ons at all? But also, how can we augment that then from distant spaces too? I mean, I think this next 10 years is really, really exciting, and there's a lot of convergence to do. And we're seeing convergence coming up. And maybe that is part of this next decade's work, actually choosing the right tools and converging them in the right way, and actually aiming those towards the virtual physical mix, that blending. That is, the way that young people think already. They don't think other than virtual physical, flowing between the two. If you look at 12-year-olds today, they would find this kind of discussion a bit strange. Actually, my sons do. They're like, what do you mean? It's happening already. This is of course this is going to happen, And actually how we then merge that back into And I'll bring that up again, more intimate environments, more either directly sensual and sexual environments, but right through to togetherness environments, and environments which are about love and joy and hope as well, not just about war and fighting. I'm saying very obvious things here, but I think they need to be said. So, thank you. Thanks very much.